I cheated on my boyfriend with my best friend and her boyfriend. But let's start from the beginning. I really love my boyfriend. Every time I see him, it's like being wrapped in a cozy blanket on a cold winter's night. He's this young, whip-smart kid, just 19, but with an old soul that resonates deeply within me. Despite me being 5 years his senior, something about him has just always clicked. We've been friends for over 2 years, a wild, fun ride of laughter and deep conversations that somehow never grew stale. He chazzed me hard, like a cute puppy chazzing a particularly elusive squirrel. Despite his dogged persistence, I kept him at arm's length. It wasn't because I didn't like him, quite the opposite, but our age gap gave me pause. Finally, after countless attempts, I decided to give him a shot. And boy, did I fall hard. Then, as if someone decided to flip our world upside down, he got hit with a draft notice for the army. The news arrived like a punch to the gut, a painful reality I wasn't prepared to face. He was to be shipped off to another city, an entirely different region. The thought of not seeing him for who knows how long was unbearable. Our last night together was a blur of tears, fears, and promises. Vows of unending love and loyalty echoed in the chilly night air as he boarded that bus. As he left, I held on to his last words, "Wait for me." Months passed. 1, 2, 3. Each day was a battle against loneliness. His absence gnawed at me, but I filled my time with work, friends, and counting down the days until his return. All the while, ignoring the attention of other guys. I was determined he was worth the wait. It starts with a simple invite. My best friend, Laura, and I are due for a girls' night in. She shows up at my doorstep with a big smile, a bag of chips, and a bottle of wine. We settle in for the night, our favorite playlist in the background, sipping on our wine and talking about everything and nothing all at once. The evening's full of laughter, impromptu dance-offs, and reminiscing about the good old days. The wine's a nice touch, just enough to loosen the edges, but not enough to go overboard. That's when Laura drops the idea. "Why don't we head to the bar downtown? The night's still young," she suggests, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I hesitate for a moment, but then think, why not? It's been a while since we'd gone out. So, we head to the bar. It's a cozy little joint downtown, filled with the sounds of glasses clinking, people laughing, and the soft hum of the background music. We make our way to the bar, order our drinks and find a nice quiet corner. That's when he shows up, Laura's boyfriend Jake. Tall, handsome, and incredibly charming. We've met a few times before, but tonight, under the dim lights and the influence of alcohol, he feels like an old friend. He orders a round of shots, and from there, things start to get a little blurry. The alcohol's flowing, the music's pumping, and we're in high spirits. We dance, we laugh, we toast to friendship, love, and everything in between. Hours fly by, and before we know it, the bartender's announcing last call. In our slightly intoxicated state, going back to Laura and Jake's place seems like a fantastic idea. Just for a nightcap, then you can crash at our place or head home, Laura assures me. And I, feeling lightheaded and merry, agree. Their apartment is warm, inviting. More drinks are poured, we talk, we laugh, it feels like we're the only people in the world. And then, somewhere in between the laughter and the clinking glasses, boundaries blur. I wake up the next morning, my head throbbing, memories of the night before slowly crawling back. And like a ton of bricks, it hits me. I made a mistake, a huge one. The realization feels like a cold slap, the guilt surges like a tidal wave, and my world as I know it, shifts. Days turn into weeks, and the guilt gnaws at me, an uninvited guest in my already tumultuous mind. I replay that night over and over again, the guilt spreading through me like a poisonous vine. Every time I think of him, it feels like someone is squeezing my heart. My friend sense something's off. One afternoon, I'm sitting with my oldest friend, Grace. She's known me since we were in diapers and can read me like a book. "What's wrong?" she asks, her concerned gaze never leaving my face. I want to tell her, to pour out my guilt and shame, but the words get stuck. She can sense my struggle, so she simply holds my hand, her presence a quiet support. "Did something happen with your guy?" she finally asks. The mention of him sends a pang through my heart. They say if you love someone, you wouldn't hurt them, but I start, my voice barely a whisper. Grace looks at me, her eyes widening as she starts to piece things together. I don't say anything else, but I don't need to. She knows. I spend the following weeks wrestling with my conscience. The love I feel for him wars against the guilt that eats at me. Every phone call, every letter from him feels like a knife to the heart. I long to confess, to beg for his forgiveness. But I'm terrified. Terrified of his reaction, of the potential loss, of the impact it would have on him while he's so far away. I want him to complete his service in peace, to not have this hanging over him. And yet, the life feels like a ticking time bomb, threatening to blow up in our faces. Grace advises me to wait until he's back. It's your burden to bear right now, she says, her voice gentle. Let him finish his service with a clear mind. But she doesn't know how heavy this secret is, how it's starting to seep into every part of my life. I need help, I need guidance. I need to know if it's possible to salvage our love after such a grave mistake. How can I move forward, keeping him in my life without sacrificing my honesty and integrity? The dilemma eats at me, day in, day out, an endless echo of the mistake I made that one fateful night. Update. 2 months fly by. Fast, but slow. You know, that weird feeling when you're running on a treadmill. You're sweating bullets, heart pounding like crazy, but you're going nowhere. That's my life right now. Until I find myself in front of the same old bar, with the same people. My friend, her boyfriend, the one I messed up with, and me, Miss Guilt Trip 2023. Like last time, we chill out, share some laughs, some drinks. The vibe is cool, but the undertone, oh, it's hot, and not in a good way. The memory of that last night is there, lurking around, nudging at me. But the booze is doing its magic, blurring out the sharp edges of regret. Then comes the suggestion, the one that started it all last time. The after party at their place. I know I shouldn't, I know I mustn't, but the curiosity, the temptation, the need for an escape, it wins. And so, the history repeats itself. I cheat. Again. Next morning, I wake up with a killer hangover and a guilt that weighs a ton. Like seriously, what was I thinking? Last time was a mess, but this is a disaster. Dodging his calls and texts is my new hobby now. Because let's face it, how do you talk to someone you've cheated on? Twice. So, I ghost him. Yeah, I'm that person now. And the guilt, oh boy, it's like a leech, sucking the life out of me. The first time could be excused as a drunken folly, but now, nope. I'm a serial cheater. And let me tell you, it sucks. Every time I think of him, my heart does a weird lurch thing. It's a mix of love, guilt, and a massive amount of fear. I've screwed up big time, not once, but twice. And I have no clue how to make things right. So here I am, stuck in a whirlpool of my own crappy decisions, clueless about how to swim out. I still love him, miss him, but all this guilt and lies, it's like a wall I've built around me. I'm trapped. And honestly, right now, I'm scared of what comes next. How do I deal with this mess I've created? How do I face him? What do I do? Guys, I have no comments. Okay, maybe once you did a mistake, but twice. Crazy, stupid thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe my channel. Next story. I cheated on my husband because I wanted to feel that someone loves me. I will start from the beginning. For 18 years, I'd been married to my husband. He was the man I once thought I would grow old with, in joy, in love. We had created a world together, our world, filled with the laughter of our 2 beautiful children. We had shared dreams, shared ambitions, and we played our roles. He, the adventurous one, always on the move, always seeking something new. And I, the devoted wife, steadfast, faithful. Not a single wandering glance, not a trace of straying thoughts. Then, 7 years ago, a shift happened, like a tectonic plate moving beneath the surface of our world, jarring our existence. It was an ordinary day. I was cleaning, my hands moving through familiar chores, my mind filled with nothing more significant than grocery lists and parent-teacher meetings. That's when I found them, the plane tickets. He was going on a business trip, or so he had told me. But he wasn't alone. The name on the second ticket was not unfamiliar. It belonged to a woman I had long suspected was more than just a friend. A sinking feeling started at the pit of my stomach, spreading rapidly to every corner of my body, freezing me in place. The room seemed to spin around me, a whirlwind of denial and betrayal. The men who talk about the agony of finding out their wives cheated. They wouldn't understand, could never truly comprehend the knife twist of betrayal by a husband. I was hollowed out, stripped of any semblance of warmth or joy. I cried for 3 days, racked with sobs that seemed to echo the pain that had embedded itself deep within my soul. Do you understand what this is? I asked myself in the mirror, my voice barely a whisper. Tears streaked down my face, red and swollen from the crying. This is what real pain feels like. Only a wife who has truly loved her husband would understand how each tear felt like a piece of her heart being ripped out. How each sob was an echo of the dreams that had been brutally shattered. I was mourning the death of the love I thought was mine, and the pain, oh the pain, it was unbearable. The anguish was a living, breathing entity that consumed me, a fire that burnt every part of my heart until nothing but ashes were left. It was a pain that only wives who truly loved their husbands could fathom. The day he returned from that business trip, my heart was a battlefield of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion, a desire to salvage what was left of us, everything jumbled into a disconcerting cacophony. But I had made up my mind. I looked into his eyes, the eyes I once lost myself in, and spoke with an icy resolve. "You need to leave," I told him, each word heavy with the magnitude of the heartbreak I felt. He just stood there, taken aback, his gaze flitting between our children playing innocently in the other room and my teary eyes. But he didn't go. Instead, he stepped towards me, his brows furrowed in concern, mouth opening to form a steady stream of denials. "There's nothing between us," he said, taking my hand. His touch, once a source of comfort, now felt like a burn. "Believe me, please." His pleas hung in the air, a fragile bubble of hope he was trying to create. I had two choices: burst a bubble or step into it with him. For the sake of our children, especially our youngest, a 3-year-old boy who was too young to understand the concept of a broken family, I chose the latter. I wore the mask of belief, feigned the naive wife who trusted her husband. But deep within, something started to wither away, like a flower deprived of sunlight. As the days turned into months, then years, I knew he hadn't severed ties with her. There were late-night calls, secret messages, hushed conversations. The affair didn't just continue, it flourished, and with each passing moment, I felt a part of myself fade away. 7 years of living in this cruel deception sucked the warmth out of me. What remained was a hollow shell, filled with nothing but indifference and emptiness. It felt as though my heart had been frozen over, numb to the emotions that once defined me as a woman, as a wife. His treatment of me throughout those 18 years was almost mechanical, predictable. "I bring the money, you look after the house and the children," he'd say, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. "Just don't ask where I am or who I'm with." It was a statement, a decree of sorts that silenced me into accepting the unfair balance in our relationship. He was the breadwinner, and I was merely the caretaker. Over time, his words became the rhythm to which our marriage danced, a dance that left me exhausted, depleted, and eternally waiting for a tune that played the notes of love, respect, and equality. But all I was left with was the haunting silence of my own unvoiced desires. The decision to leave my husband was a slow burn, simmering at the back of my mind for a long time until it became impossible to ignore. I was merely sharing a roof with a man who was essentially a stranger, an unwelcome occupant in a house that no longer felt like home. I felt like a ghost in my own life, drifting through a monotonous routine, waiting for something to shatter the suffocating silence of my existence. Then, as fate would have it, I ran into an old flame from my past, a man who used to make my heart flutter in the days of youthful passion and uninhibited dreams. It was a chance encounter, a serendipitous twist of fate. He was with his wife, a picture of domestic bliss that stabbed me with an unexpected pang of jealousy. As I sat in my car, I watched him with a fascination that bordered on envy. He was attentive to his wife, helping her into the car with a tenderness that was palpable even from a distance. He brushed off the invisible specks of dust from her jacket, his fingers dancing with a familiar ease and love. The simple act held me captivated, an echo of a long-lost rhythm. This was care, real, profound, heartfelt. This was something I had never received from my husband. "Is this what I've been missing?" I found myself whispering, my reflection in the rear-view mirror echoing the longing in my eyes. The pull towards this man was irresistible, a magnetic force that led me back to him. We began to meet, to talk, to share. I wasn't seeking physical intimacy, that was not the void I needed to fill. I yearned for emotions, for the warmth of words that assured me of my worth. I craved the assurance that I was needed, loved, cherished. All those sweet nothings, those comforting whispers, the shared smiles and laughter that my husband bestowed upon another woman, I found in the companionship of this man from my past. "Does it feel good to be cared for?" he asked me one day, his gaze soft with concern. "It feels alive," I whispered back, my heart heavy with a bittersweet happiness. I wanted to feel alive again, to feel something other than the numbing cold that had been my constant companion for the past 7 years. And in the arms of this man, I found a glimmer of the warmth I had been craving for so long. The stolen moments with my old flame lasted for 3 months, a tempest of rediscovered emotions, of much-needed affection, of the feeling of being truly cherished. But then, like a match doused in water, it was snuffed out abruptly when my husband found out. The ensuing weeks were a maelstrom of accusations, guilt, anger, and heartache. There were endless late-night confrontations, words wielded like weapons, piercing the silence of our home. "What do you want from me, Olga?" my husband demanded one such night, his face a portrait of betrayal. The irony of his hurt was not lost on me, but I had neither the energy nor the heart to argue. "I want you to understand," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "I want you to realize what it feels like to be left out in the cold." Despite his infidelities, the announcement that he intended to leave me for his mistress hurt. He was willingly choosing her over me, over our family, over the life we had built together. It was a sharp, cold realization that gripped my heart. "I'm going to live with her," he stated one night, his voice as cold as the words themselves. "I think it's best for both of us." But life has a peculiar way of shifting the scales. Amidst the chaos of our disintegrating marriage, I was hospitalized due to stress. As the sterile hospital room became my temporary abode, I felt my life teetering on the brink. One evening, in a haze of medication and despair, I heard my husband's voice, cracking with a fear I had never heard before. "Don't die, Olga. Please, I love you." He sobbed beside my hospital bed, a man unmasked by fear and regret. Those words I had yearned to hear more than anything were spoken for the second time in our 18 years of marriage. It was heartbreaking and heartwarming in equal measure. Against all odds, my husband stayed by my side through it all. He slept on the uncomfortable chair next to my hospital bed, his dreams tangled in the beeping monitors and sterile sheets. And somewhere, in the world outside, his mistress was waiting, a ghost of his double life lingering on the outskirts of our shared turmoil. As I lay there, oscillating between the sadness of the past and the uncertainty of the future, I found a strange solace in his presence. The path ahead was murky, the destination unknown. But for the first time in years, it felt like we were walking it together even if we were both lost. I'm not justifying myself by any means. I am guilty. But there are different situations, and it's not fair to judge everyone by the same standard. I'll answer to God for my sin, which I deeply regret. But you men, you often hurt us, break our bones without even thinking about the suffering we endure. I don't know what will happen next. But I believe in my husband and try to keep living.